Gather round now, cubs, and listen to the story of Chippy the noble hedgehog. Now, many of you might think that only grizzly bears can be fierce and noble. I'm sure that when you think of the most noble creature in the forest, you do not imagine the humble hedgehog. Well, when I was a young cub, I once met a little hedgehog that was as noble as any grizzly. He showed me that having big fangs and sharp claws is impressive, but knowing when to use them is what makes you noble. There was once a very shy little hedgehog named Chippy. He found it difficult to make friends, and while all of the other little hoglets went rolling down hills during lunch break at hedgehog school, Chippy would spend his time sniffing flowers and watching ants. At hedgehog school, all of the little ones would compete to see who was the bravest by playing spearball. Spearball, as you know, is the hedgehog's favourite game, and all of the little hoglets couldn't wait for the lunch bell to ring each day so that they could all line up on top of School Hill, curl up into balls, and roll down the hill as fast as they could. The hoglet that could get to the bottom of the hill the fastest, while spearing the most leaves on his spikes, was declared the winner and leader of the hoglets. Every single day, Henry the Hoglet won. This success made Henry the Hoglet very arrogant indeed. Because he was the leader of the hoglets, he demanded that everyone do as he asked, and he expected that everyone should fear and respect him. Now, Chippy had absolutely no interest in playing spearball or competing to be the leader of the hoglets. This annoyed Henry, who would mock Chippy and call him weak and slow. Henry told all of the other hoglets that Chippy was a coward and that they should not play with him or talk to him. And while Chippy felt sad at being left out, he was easily able to amuse himself by building bridges for ants to cross puddles and by making the hedgehog school prettier by picking flowers for all of the classrooms. One day, as all of the hoglets were leaving school, Chippy decided to take the long way home to see if the snowdrops had woken up from their winter sleep. He was so busy sniffing in between the leaves and twigs of the forest floor that he didn't realize that he had been followed and surrounded by Henry and his gang. "Well, well," shouted Henry, "what have we here?" Chippy got a terrible shock and jolted upright. "What are you doing? Looking for ants to play with because nobody else likes you?" Henry sneered. I was just," Chippy stuttered nervously as he tried to explain himself. I, mocked Henry. "Why don't you just get out of here and never come back, you coward?" Henry said as he began to move towards Chippy. "Nobody would miss you if you just ran away and never came back." But I don't want to run away," Chippy said. "Who cares what you want?" snapped Henry. "I am the leader around here, and I don't want any cowards in my forest. Go on, get out of here." Henry pushed Chippy to the ground and snapped at his hind legs as he tried to escape. Chippy ran and ran through the forest to escape Henry and his gang. When he was too exhausted to go on, he threw himself down on the ground, and it was only then that he realized that he was very far from home. He began to retrace his steps, but it was no use. He was lost and miserable. He walked aimlessly through the trees for what seemed like hours. Tired and sad, he wandered, looking only at the ground before him, until he bumped into a huge, furry lump. It took him a moment to realize that tree stumps and rocks and other woodland things are not furry. Eventually, looking up, he saw a huge and terrifying grizzly bear. Certain that he was going to be eaten for dinner, Chippy didn't even bother to roll into a ball. "Well, well, well," said a big grizzly voice. "Who have we here?" Looking around, Chippy realized that he had wandered into the center of a big circle of grizzly cubs. He had imposed on a bear school, and it was the teacher that now dangled him in front of the class. Look here, little cubs, the teacher said. This is a hoglet, or a baby hedgehog. But this is no ordinary hoglet. Most hedgehogs would be terrified at the very sight of a fearsome grizzly. But this little fellow is surely the bravest of his kind there has ever been. All of the grizzly cubs chattered excitedly and drew in close to better see this heroic hoglet. Settle down now, cubs, said the teacher. Now, little hoglet, why have you so bravely joined our class today? Because I'm lost, whispered Chippy, and because I was chased out of Hedgehog school. Well, I'm not surprised they chased you out, said the teacher. They were surely jealous of your courage. Never mind, there is always a place for fierce and noble creatures at our bear school. All of the grizzly cubs cheered and welcomed Chippy into their group. Over the next few weeks, Chippy became a star student at the bear school. He taught the grizzly cubs where to find the finest flowers in the forest, and he explained the habits of hedgehogs and ants and all the other little creatures of the forest. In return, he learned how to growl like a fearsome grizzly, stand on his hind legs, bare his fangs and claws at the same time. In short, he learned how to be fierce. However, as time went on, Chippy missed his family and decided that it was time to go home. The grizzly cubs were very sad to see him go, but understood that he needed his family too. As a going away present, the grizzly teacher put Chippy up on his back and carried him home through the forest like a hero. Needless to say, his family were delighted and relieved to see him again. The next day, he returned to school, and all of the others, especially Henry, were amazed to see him again. At lunch, Henry and the others approached him. I thought I told you not to come back here, Henry snarled. You are not one of us. If you come back here tomorrow, I'm going to make you very sorry. Henry and all of the others then went over to School Hill for a game of spearball. All of the hoglets lined up as normal, but before they could curl up into balls, they heard a terrible shriek from above. A massive eagle with long, sharp claws swooped down with great speed. All of the terrified hedgehogs froze and did nothing as the eagle snatched one little hoglet. Henry, their leader, looked on helplessly, and when he recovered enough, curled up into a tight ball and rolled down School Hill as fast as he could. The others shouted for Henry to come back and help their friend, but it was no use. Henry was gone, making sure that he was safe. It certainly looked like it would be a terrible day at the hedgehog school when all of the hoglets heard a massive growl from behind them. It was so fearsome that the eagle dropped the little hoglet and he rolled away to safety. Looking around, all of the hoglets were shocked to see Chippy standing up on his hind legs, baring his teeth and waving his claws about. Chippy roared again, and this time the frightened eagle flew away. All of the hoglets scuttled over to Chippy and lifted him high on their spikes. In class, they told their teacher how the hero Chippy saved the day. Needless to say, from that day on, Chippy was the new leader of the hoglets. But that is not where the story ends. Some days later, when Henry was feeling less embarrassed for having rolled away, he asked Chippy why he had not stood up for himself that same day at lunch. To which Chippy replied, "It is very impressive to have fangs and sharp claws, but it's another thing to know when to use them." That had been the greatest lesson that Chippy had learnt at bear school. And that is the story of how one little hedgehog became a fierce but noble grizzly. And how do I know all of this, you might ask? Well, I was there the very day that little brave Hoglet stumbled into our bear school, and I sat with him every day after.